All right, welcome back to the channel. Sam Bisnick here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the benefits of using a rower for the rehabilitative process, for corrective exercise, improving posture, and all of these other different types of functions, including just improving general fitness. So today, we're going to be using the Merach home electromagnetic rower, which I think is a great device. We'll be talking about some of the benefits of how it works, but also kind of using it as a demo to talk about rowing. Now, one of the most common questions I get from clients is when they're coming in for no matter what it is, whether it's neck problems, back, knees, hip flexors, etc., is would XYZ exercise be good for this problem? And usually the questions are about activities that are cardiovascular based. Should I walk on the treadmill, run on the treadmill? Can I use a recumbent bike? Should I use a rower, etc.? And those are great questions to ask. Now, some of the main benefits, obviously, which we're not going to dive too far into, of doing cardiovascular exercise, it's one of the top ways that you can exercise and reduce pain levels in particular. But the challenge is with that, of course, is that you have to fit the activity to the individual based upon what they have going on. So if somebody has a lot of knee pain, it might be hard to do cardiovascular exercise in the form of running or sprinting, obviously jogging and so forth. It's not necessarily that they couldn't do those activities, but it can be challenging to determine the dosage, the mileage, etc., especially when they're in the process of trying to quiet those knees down and get stronger, for example. When we're using something like a rower can present benefits in that situation, for example, with knees, because it would be low impact and it would be predominantly working the upper body. So you would fit that exercise for the individual's needs until you can get them back to doing their activity, for example. Now, the rower in particular, because I want to slant my conversation here about this tool in particular, is a rower has a lot of unique benefits that you're not going to get from other types of cardiovascular exercise. The biggest one in particular is that most cardio is based around the lower body. So we have a recumbent bike, we have the treadmill, and so forth. There's not a lot of cardiovascular type exercises that target upper body muscles in particular. Now, certainly you're using your upper body during those other exercises, but they're not going to necessarily be fatiguing those muscle groups. And that would have extra benefit in the rehabilitative process. Now, one of the most popular things that's used in the rehabilitative process in terms of cardio would be an upper body exerciser, where you would actually, like an upper body ergometer, where you would sit and pedal with your arms, okay? Now, most people don't have access to that one, and it's also not a particularly enjoyable version of cardio. But what we would use in place of that, which would be a good option, is a rower. The rower in particular is performing that pulling motion, which is going to be emphasizing in particular a group of muscles that a lot of people need help with in terms of strength and endurance, which is the muscles in between the shoulder blades, the scapular retractors, and a little bit what we call the scapular depressors, which is the muscles that pull down. Now, I think it's no secret that high repetitions of pulling-based activities and strengthening the upper back and developing endurance is good for posture, but it also reduces discomfort associated with common shoulder problems and common neck problems. Because most of us out there are sitting around like this with our shoulders elevated and slumped forward. Now, this would be a great way to do a lot of repetitions of getting those shoulder blades back and down. So that is a huge benefit. The other thing is that most of us spend our time sitting throughout the day. We're sitting in front of a computer, we're sitting in cars and so forth, and our hips need some mobility. Now, one of the challenges with this is figuring out activities that actually require some movement of the hips, and the rowing device would give us movement of the hips, as I'm going to show you here in a few, if you're not already familiar with a rower. So there's a lot of benefits of using a rower, for example, versus using a recumbent bike. So we're going to be getting more muscle groups involved, and we're also going to be targeting muscle groups that we're not necessarily going to get with some of those other types of cardio. So let's talk about rowing here real quick and the position and options. A lot of rowers are classically quite pricey and usually not necessarily expensive relative to, for example, getting a treadmill, but they can be if you're getting multiple pieces of equipment. So you have to do your homework and diligence to figure out what would be best for you. Now, there's a lot of common rowers out there. On average, they're going to be in the $700 plus range, If that's outside of your budget, you might want to look at something that's a little bit more cost effective for home use. Merach is the brand that is coming up and coming. They're doing a great job developing equipment, and I've been happy with their products so far. And this one in particular is one of the best rowing options, I believe, for under 500 bucks. So it is electromagnetic based, and it is built really well. Those of you who are always challenged with trying to figure out how to put these things together, I've put together a lot of fitness equipment, and a lot of stuff is really confusing or a real huge pain to put together. And this was really, really easy to do. Just some bolts and so forth to stick in place, and then it's ready to go. So let's talk about design of rowers. One of the biggest considerations you should have is, of course, making sure that it fits for your body size. So before I show you this with me, realize myself, I am 6'3", so I am bigger than most equipment, especially in the economy kind of budget range, we're oftentimes going to allow. So that is something to consider. If you are over, in my opinion, about 6'1", then this rower in particular is probably going to be a tad small for you, as I'm going to show here in a minute. But the other thing that you need to be looking for as a priority when you're looking for fitness equipment for most people is how much sound or how much noise something produces as well. So in particular, what I like about these kinds of devices that are electromagnetic based is they are whisper quiet. So as I'm going to show you there, that is another huge, huge benefit here. So with a rowing device, this thing does not take up much space here. Merach designed it quite well. It's pretty small and compact, and it does actually fold up. So it has wheels over here, so you could lift it up and lean it up against the wall, which is another huge benefit. I don't want stuff all over the place in my office. I like things out of the way and keeping things tidy. So that is a huge, huge benefit, especially for storage. So when you put your feet up in these guys here, these plates are going to roll a little bit. One of the things that I did like about this is that they do have over here on the side these little hooks. So all you need to do is yank on those a little bit, and then you have your Velcro straps. So in the process of rowing, we're oftentimes going to be just kind of pumping our legs forward and backward. I am not an expert rower, so I'm not going to be talking about the ideal technique for sports performance rowing. This is just fitness rowing. So I want to put that disclaimer in there. But as you can see here is that if I straighten myself all the way out, I'm getting toward the end of the seat here. My knees cannot completely lock out on this rower. So I would like to see, for me, to have a few more inches of movement here. So if you are tall and you're looking for a rower to get a full extended range of motion, you're probably going to have to upgrade and go with something a little bit more higher on the dollar scale. Okay, but for 99% of people, this is going to fit just perfectly. The glide here works really, really well. It is super quiet. You may or may not be able to hear that if I stop yapping for a moment. Up here on the deck, you have a digital dashboard, which I'll show you here in a minute, and you have your handle. Okay, it's wide enough for most uses. You can see here that it has this kind of a strap. Okay, very well made, good stitching. It's going to last a while. And so when we start our rowing procedure, after we hit the start button, but I'm going to show you this first, we actually pull toward. Now, those of you who are dealing with hip issues, if you don't have a lot of hip flexion, then obviously modifications will need to happen where your knees will have to kind of bow out to the side a little bit when you start to go into hip flexion if you're going to try to go through that range of motion. So obviously if you don't and you can keep a good decent hip angle, this would be as far forward as you would go. So it's fairly easy modifiable for individuals who want to row. If you have hip issues, you just limit the range of motion, okay? But if you don't, you could always fold all the way forward, okay? And in this position here, then obviously we're going to encourage hip flexion. We're going to get some additional stretch benefits of these tissues. We can round our back if we wanted to in order to encourage a full amount of spinal flexion and extension. And then we would push with our feet as we row. So we push with the feet to engage the hip extensors as we pull, and we can get those muscles of the shoulder blades working, pinching in nice and tight. Now, the key with a rower also is that it is a concentric-based activity. So when we're pulling, we're exerting force and the muscles are actually shortening. That's a concentric activity, but we don't get much resistance on the eccentric. So slowing ourselves down is not a big component that we have to concern ourselves with. We're obviously going to get more as we turn up the levels here because this is level 1, but we're going to get a lot of force production and not having to decelerate, okay? So this can be a good rehabilitative exercise for individuals that are targeting concentric only activity, okay? So you can see here I have the option to row right into the belly. We could, of course, row a little bit higher and bring our arms out to the side, which will emphasize the rear deltoids a little bit more. And for individuals who need more upper back strengthening, I know it seems uncommon for people to recommend pulling up high, but we do need conditioning of the upper traps and the levator scap. So I can pull all the way up. So I can pull middle or low, middle, and then pull up. Now, this is a very comfortable exercise, and I can fatigue my upper back muscles as hard as I want to pull. So if I want to keep a light grip in there and pull, I can get a high number of repetitions in here. So one of the benefits in the rehabilitative process, and you've heard me if you watch my videos talk about this over and over again, is doing very low intensity, very high repetitions, because we're going to be promoting threat-free training to the tissue. So we're not excessively stimulating those nerves. That can increase nerve sensitivity and thus pain. We're sending lots of safety information into our nervous systems while we're getting the benefits of cardiovascular exercise, which if you've seen any of the research on that, the cardio improves a lot of different areas. Number one, improves chronic pain, also reduces anxiety and depression. So we're getting all these positive benefits here. Doing exercise repetitively at low intensity that does not hurt. So a lot of good stuff that's coming out of this, okay? So the tool itself is a good option, especially if you like this kind of rhythmic activity and you also need the benefit of conditioning those scapular retractors and your spinal extensors, okay? Now, the other benefits we've got here of using this tool is that we have a plate right here where we can put our phone, and Merach offers classes that you can take, okay? So these can be found online. So if you like the benefit of rowing in kind of a community atmosphere with instructors and so forth, you could stick your phone in there and log in, and you can go along for the ride with the class. So that's a pretty cool addition right there. So now let's talk about what the plate here allows for us to do, or the dial, and some of the options that are included. So with the console, we just have to kick that on to start it, and then we have a very simple little dashboard here with a lot of different things you can see in the instruction manual. In particular, we have things, for example, resistance level. This is something you should know about. A lot of times with rowers, there are resistance levels that as you start to turn them up on a very popular one, it's not a huge difference in the resistance level, and I can tell you on this, it is quite noticeable. This goes, and I was demoing this at level 1, but simple turn of the dial will turn that thing all the way up to 16 resistance levels, okay? So there is quite a bit of difference in those resistance levels, and you will absolutely feel that. So don't worry about the exercise being too easy. Now the display has a lot of benefits to it. Obviously here we could see the usual speed, because obviously keeping a set level of speed can help you monitor your intensity level. Of course, it's going to keep the time, the distance. You can count calories if you like to do that too, and there is a connectivity with Bluetooth, okay? So you also do get an app with Merach as well, so you can download that from the App Store to track your workouts and so forth, but you pretty much got everything you need here, okay? So the easiest thing here is to be able to spin that around. You can change the resistance levels and, of course, what you're seeing on the dashboard here. And then, like I said, right there as a close-up, this is exactly where you put your phone right here, so you can watch your class or whatever as you're going, or TV shows, whatever it takes to get you on the rower and then putting in the time and the effort into it. So be sure to include entertainment as one of the key factors that's important for being able to do cardiovascular exercise and keeping you engaged. All right, so that about wraps it up for the video. Those are my recommendations when it comes to looking for a rower for home use. The Merach is a really good option. I do recommend them. And also make sure you go over the finer details to figure out if rowing is a good option for you, as I mentioned early on in the video. If you're interested in picking up this device right here, I'll include a link down low so that you could take advantage of current offers. And make sure you comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you like these kinds of reviews, then of course, do me a favor, hit the likes up button there, subscribe to the channel so you get notified anytime I put out a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.